Smyth? 7:55 a.m. Finally, I've been waiting here for 10 minutes. That's time I could have spent out there working. I quickly approached the head nurse's desk. Yes, ma'am? And how are you this morning, Miss Smyth? She smiles broadly. It's a friendly, welcoming smile. It's a waste of my time. Fine, thank you. I'm ready. Wonderful. And do you have any questions? No questions, ma'am. I just really like to get out there and work. I can practically feel the ticking of my watch. All right. She slowly puts on her spectacles and takes a long moment to examine the schedule spread out before her. Kalihi will be your district, she continues. This morning I need you at the elementary school. The school, ma'am? Is there a problem, Mabel? She glances at me over the top of her spectacles. Of course not. But I can't help myself. I was just hoping to spend the day at the day camp, that's all. Yes, I'm sure you would find our work at Palama very interesting indeed. You have training with consumptives, correct? I do, I reply. Springfield, Massachusetts. Springfield Hospital in Massachusetts. Mr. and Mrs. Rath were generous enough to pay for my schooling there. Yes, our benefactors are quite generous indeed. Yes, and it was their hope that I would return to Palama with specialized training. Of course! She seems to be missing the point. Specialized training that would allow me to work with specialized patients. Wonderful. Then I'm certain you will have no problem treating every special case that you encounter at the elementary school. Oh, that smile is becoming absolutely maddening. What I mean to say, ma'am, is that I think that my talents will best be suited at the Pa'ola Day Camp. You see, I have some new ideas. I can hear that youthful edge beginning to creep into my voice. I hate it. Ideas are wonderful, Miss Smyth, but this morning I need you at the elementary school. Of course, I'm sorry. No need to apologize. That smile returns as if it had never left. Oh, and Miss Smyth, could you please keep an eye out for folliculosis, will you? 12 cases have been reported this week, and we're afraid we may have an epidemic on our hands. I will. Good. Best of luck to you. 8:01 a.m. As I step outside into the sweltering July sun, I can't shake the feeling of disappointment. All of that training so I could wipe the runny noses of school children? There are plenty of untrained women here who could do that perfectly well. I'll have a talk with Mr. Rath when I return. He'll know where my talents are best suited. The settlement yard is already abuzz with activity. The other nurses prepare to depart for their respective districts, while the early risers of the neighborhood await the opening of the gymnasium and the swimming tank. It is incredible to think that just over a decade ago, this settlement was nothing more than a chapel, the first of its kind in the area. And as the neighborhood grew and the tenements replaced the duck ponds and the taro patches, Palama grew with it. And Mr. and Mrs. Rath, a pair of respected social workers, moved here from the mainland in hopes to convert the chapel into the settlement. And the settlement movement gained popularity after successes in Toynbee Hall in England and Jane Addams' Hull House in Chicago. And I think Addams explained the concept best when she said that charities do for while settlements do with. People who take advantage of settlements aren't needy clients, but neighbors who want to build a better community for themselves. So a head worker, manager, settles into a needy community in order to better assess what the people need most. And what Mr. Rath noticed was that the people needed a place for the children to learn and play in a safe and supervised environment. And they needed role models to make people feel fulfilled and included. But what Mr. Rath noted the most was that they needed health care. And so Mr. and Mrs. Rath started the best public health nursing program in Palama through the on-site facilities and dispensary, as well as the off-site facilities at Pa'ola Day Camp, where the nurses are able to concentrate on the medical community's white whale, tuberculosis. But it seems like old Mabel will be needed elsewhere today. 8:21 a.m. As I step into the Kalihi Kai Elementary School, I notice a snaking line of students already waiting for treatment. I see a couple skinny urchins kicking a ball in the dried up grass. My diagnosis is they need a proper meal. The teacher takes me to a rundown old desk. Nurse Smyth is officially open for business. The students come in one at a time, and my first patient is a young boy named Tai Chu, the son of a Chinese cannery worker. He whines that a nail may poke in his hand. So I disinfect and bandage the wound. And I tell him that he needs to take a trip to the dispensary for a tetanus shot. And he bursts into tears. Next, a Hapa boy comes in with a hurt shoulder. He definitely sprained it roughhousing on the playground. I apply some liniment and I tell him to ask his mama to lomi every night and every morning. For some reason, he also bursts into tears. Next, a young Korean girl comes in rubbing her red, swollen eyes. Definitely folliculosis. Tears. Next, a Puerto Rican boy with a cut on his hand. Tears. Next, little Kiyoshi just wanted to meet the new nurse. Tears when he has to leave. Next, the sheer number and variety of cases is actually overwhelming. I'm not too sure that an untrained nurse would be able to keep up with all of this. 10:21 a.m. A little Hawaiian girl pauses just shy of the threshold. She looks at me warily. Take your time, sweetie. I certainly don't have other patients to tend to today. What seems to be the problem? I imitate my best head nurse saccharine smile. The teacher tells me, I'm sorry, she only speaks Hawaiian, but I'm happy to translate for you. Ovaiko inoa? I asked the young girl. Do you speak the language? The teacher asks. Yes, my mother was born in Kona, and before she can ask, my father was born in Ireland. I continue to address the young girl. Ovaiko inoa? What's your name? Leilani, she tells me. Oh, Mabel Leilani ho'u inoa. My name is Mabel Leilani. She analyzes this information. She's about the same age as the other patients that I've tended to today, but there's something different about her. She's more adult. I continue to address her in Hawaiian. From one Leilani to another, it's nice to meet you. Now, what seems to be the problem? She launches into a description of her symptoms. She's calm, she's detailed, she is self-aware. I'm afraid I might like this girl. She says that her chest hurts when she breathes, and sometimes there's blood when she coughs. So I conduct a brief examination. check her temperature, and I feel her pulse, and I listen to her lungs. She hasn't been breathing, and it shows. I'm afraid this might be a serious case. Well, Leilani, I'm glad that you came to see me today. I think we should take you to see a doctor. No tears. She simply looks at me and says, "Can Mama come see the doctor too?" I don't know. I have to come and examine her first. Well, will you come examine her? I look at the teacher, and she nods. All right, well, where do you live? I'll take you, she says. All right. She starts to stand when suddenly she's racked with a violent cough, and the teacher and I try to help her stand, but she says that she's fine. Come, she says. So she leads me out of the school doors. We are met with the 90-degree weather, and there are no sign of the trade winds. These elements together create that truly unique kalihikai smell. I'm told that it wasn't always like this. 20 years ago it was a lovely neighborhood, but that was before the fire. In 1900, a handful of Chinatown residents were diagnosed with bubonic plague, and panic ran rampant. A quarantine was imposed on the residents, and the military troops were called to enforce it. And ultimately, the Board of Health decided to burn down the infected areas. And they successfully did so, as well as burn an additional 38 acres of property, leaving some 4,000 people without homes. And in response to this, cheap, poorly built tenements were hastily thrown up. And it is one of these buildings that Leilani calls home. Come, she says, when suddenly she is hit with another violent cough. Are you all right? I ask her. I'm fine, she says. And that's when it hits me. This tough keiki coughing in the middle of the street is the spit and image of my sister, Eva. She was born partially blind, and our mother had difficult delivery. Eva had a twin, also named Mabel, who died soon after her birth. And perhaps it was because I felt I owed something to my deceased namesake, or perhaps I felt sorry for my sister's loss, but I became Eva's new twin. I followed her around the house, I followed her around school, I followed her everywhere. I wanted to take care of her, but she always said, "I'm fine, Mabel, I can take care of myself." But it is because of her that I became a nurse. And so Leilani leads me into her home, and outside the sun is bright and cheerful, but as soon as the door closes behind us, we are plunged into a thick black gloom. There's not a window to be found in the hallway. As my eyes struggle to adjust to the darkness, Leilani skips ahead, singing one of those children's tunes that everyone seems to be so fond of, but I have to hold on to the walls on either side of me, the wallpaper stripping in ragged pieces and the floor swollen beneath my feet. She asks me to come through a door. Its hinges are detached. I enter the room and see a small window letting in some precious rays of sunlight, showing a low bed, if one can even call it a bed. It's just a few boards nailed together with a torn piece of matting over it as a sheet. The bed is surrounded by filthy piles of clothing and empty whiskey bottles. And in the other corner, my breath catches my throat. A young woman not much older than myself is hunched over in the corner, holding a small bundle, a baby girl not much older than 2 months. Leilani comes in with a tin cup, and she encourages her mother to drink water. "You care for them?" I ask her. "Yes," she says. "Well, then who takes care of you?" She shrugs and carries on with her task. 11:52 a.m. Dr. Jackson from the settlement comes in and confirms my initial diagnosis. The family has tuberculosis. Fortunately, Leilani and her baby sister are in the early stages of the disease. But her mother is a more serious case. She needs to be taken to the day camp at Paola. Leilani comes to me and asks, "Will Mama be okay? Will she die?" "I don't know," I tell her. "But I promise that we'll do everything that we can to help her." She registers this information, and she gives me the most genuine smile I have seen all day. "I'm glad that you came to school today," she says to me. "So am I say, as I return the smile in kind. Schools teach our children how to read and write, how to calculate sums, and to learn about the world's history, but what if we taught our children about their health as well? What if Leilani had known what symptoms to look for and where to go when she spotted them? What if her mother had known how to care for a newborn baby? What if they had known how to keep their space tidy and neat and their bodies clean in order to reduce the threat of illness? A public health nurse, in order to be successful, must know that medical care will come through each person's intelligent cooperation and also those who control their environment. That is something that I now understand. And one day, when I'm the head nurse, I will be sure that each nurse at the Palama settlement understands this. Each nurse in Hawaii will understand this. 12:52 p.m. Perfect. That's plenty time for me to return to the settlement for further assignment. After all, there are only so many minutes in the day.